Cali. Not for the weather, not for the sticky green, wherever else the lyrics go. Going to play Southern California. Woo! Time to get fired up on this Monday during the college football season. Michigan coming off a victory at home on Saturday, and now they will make the move west to take on USC in a Saturday night clash at the Coliseum. Great. I mean, it is great. You're a Michigan football fan. Don't get any better than this when it comes down to October. Now, last year, Michigan was in a very similar position. They were 4-1, and they were heading out to Washington. And that game didn't go good. And then they hit a downturn, and that was one of the themes today, why it would be different this year for Michigan than it was last year. I ask you that question. Why would this year be different? Well, the things that we have talked about this year, they've got a quarterback. And so that's a big difference. Playmaking quarterback who is getting better and better and better. But we got plenty of stuff to talk about when it comes to Michigan football. Let's go over it. We will look at that game. An early bird look at Michigan, an underdog against Southern California. College football as a whole this weekend, if you were someone that made predictions before the season, or you're someone who is a draft expert, picking who the quarterbacks specifically were going to be in the first round, it's a lot different how the landscape looks now than it did before the season. But we're going to start with the game that was played on Saturday. That was Michigan and Wisconsin. You know, it was a surprise to see the Michigan defense get pushed around on the opening series. But after that, they, what do I say, buckled down. I don't know if there were adjustments, whatever it was. They were pretty good after that. You know, for me, I've been going to these games this year, and I had taken 4 or 5 years off of going to games, and I used to do nothing but go to games. It's an adjustment if you've just watched games on TV all the time. Not just the adjustment of you just used to sitting on your couch and watching it from the 50-yard line and listening to the broadcast, but when you're sitting there and watching the game live, it's just a different feel. And I was reminded on the first series, I was thinking, are they really pushing them around? Are they gaining yards out there? Because I don't know. It's like because you got a different angle. I'm not totally on the 50, and it's just everyone has a unique look when you're at the stadium. And I just had to remind myself. And then you get going a little bit, and you watch a little bit more, and you kind of remember what it was like and what you're looking for and the different matchups and everything else. And I think the adjustment finally, for me, after a few home games, what was it? 1, 2, 3, the fourth, no, wait, New Mexico, CMU, and Wisconsin, the third home game, it's taken me to be like, okay, now I have the view of the whole field, and I'm looking for certain things. So that's just an aside for me. The offense didn't get going in that game on Saturday until late in the third quarter, and it felt to me that they needed someone to stand up and say, "Get me the ball. I'm the wide receiver number 1." Now, Donovan McCulley, he doesn't appear to have the kind of personality of a me guy or someone who's going to scream at the quarterback or tell me to get me the damn ball kind of I don't know, personality. Sure, could he be a dog still? No, that's what they want to be, a dog. It was like that's what happened. That he made the big catch down the sideline, was able to get his foot in. They called him out, and then the next play, Michigan did a trick play, which was nice, and then they got him the ball, and he pinballed into the end zone, touchdown. And I don't know if the sky opened up or the confidence opened up for the team, but it looked like that. And then they played like that mostly the rest of the way. They were just getting some rhythm going, and then there was a drop by Bell. But the offense, if you're looking for, I know there are a lot of people, so what are your thoughts on Wisconsin? People, holding their nose or saying, oh, no, they're in trouble if they can't, barely beat Wisconsin. That's not the boat that I'm in. I thought that, and I know this is one of those things where you say, well, you just worry about Michigan. But when you watch some of these other teams and go out and struggle and then actually lose, I think it can make you feel a little bit better. But then, if you're taking it, you're never taking everything and the next game you're just better at everything. But you're hoping that you are improving along the way in certain areas. And then even if you're falling down, and ultimately, whether it's going to be another month, you're going to be better or not. And I think that if they plan on throwing the ball, that if they're force feeding Donovan McCulley and now Andrew Marsh, who had 4 catches and some good ones, and Marlon Klein and Hogan Hansen, that's enough. Those are where the thrown footballs should be going. 99% of them should be going to McCulley, Marsh, Klein, or Hansen. Hansen's probably didn't play this last week, and played in a while, but he could play against USC. And if it's going to take him a little time to ramp up, then 95% of the passes should be going to 3 players: McCulley, Marsh, and Klein. There's no reason to spread it out. There's no reason to pepper Samaj Morgan or, have all these different plays for Samaj Morgan. It's go time out in California. I don't want to call it, wasting snaps going to Samaj Morgan, but I'd rather have the ball, even if it's on an end around, going to Marsh. And if the ball's in the air, I want it to go to McCulley. If they're covering McCulley, throw it to Klein. Big body and a little bit of an adjustment for Underwood, where he might look and say, McCulley's covered. But I think, you see it on film and they can talk about, throw one up. It's a 50-50 ball sometimes. And, Underwood's like, this is better than 50-50. This is 75-25. This is 90-10. Just because later in the game, there was another pass to McCulley. He's down by, I don't know if it was the 5 or 10 yard line, but he's pretty much guarded. The guy was in front of him. And Underwood just threw it down there. He wasn't open. But if he's a 95-5 guy, go up there and throw it to him. And he just went up. And it was like a long time ago, Michigan State had this wide receiver named Plaxico Burress. And it was like that with Plax. You were, the Spartans, and you would just say, throw it up to him. Doesn't matter. He's open. Doesn't matter if they have even 3 guys on him. Throw it up to him. I don't think Donovan McCulley or any of these guys are Calvin Johnson. But that was the thing with Calvin Johnson. You could just throw the ball down to him. Johnson would be there. There'd be 3 guys around him. And then there'd be this guy that would be a helmet taller. And then he would just jump higher than everybody. And then he would just catch the ball. Maybe they're learning that. That was one of my takeaways. You've got big-bodied wide receivers. You've got a young quarterback. And maybe that's what came out of this game against Wisconsin, that the passing game that needs to be better, that needs to complement the running game. More on that coming up. But if they're going to be a playoff team, this is what's going to happen. You don't have to worry about, sharing the ball. And, it's time now to get the ball to the guys that can catch it. And that's their job. They know that's their job. Get it to them. Pepper them. Target them. That's what I would like to see. I don't want to say more of. Can you scheme that up? Yes, you could scheme up more passes to McCulley. You can, do the same thing to Marsh, who's also tall wide receiver, Klein, and then if Hanson's in here, let's go. So I think encouraged by the passing game with what I saw from the McCulley driving on, that I think they are breaking through a little bit. They saw it out on the field. They saw the receivers making plays, and now it's not time where you need to be getting everyone involved. It's the opposite. It's time to focus in on who the best pass catchers are, who the better playmakers are, and get them the ball. And I think moving forward, that would be something like this Saturday, that when they do throw the ball, that's the direction it should go. The other thing is that Wisconsin statistically, and everybody would say, they're not that good against the run. I don't know. They were all right against the run. I really didn't like Michigan's approach overall. First drive, they looked good, took it right down the field. But then after that, they couldn't get the pass blocking, couldn't get the pass pro, really weren't running it well. And it really wasn't until that drive, the one that I mentioned, the McCulley drive, that it broke the seal on everything and they got it going. But Justice Haynes, I noticed today that, and was it somebody already making a comparison to who Justice Haynes reminded them of? Sharon Moore was asked today who Justice Haynes reminded him of. And if you remember the running back at Oklahoma, Sharon must have been there then, who went on to play for the Titans and Cowboys, or Cowboys and Titans, one of the DeMarco Murray. He said he reminded Haynes of that. When I first saw Haynes against Oklahoma, maybe it was even against New Mexico, I said, it's like Tyrone Wheatley. Tyrone Wheatley was a Michigan back who could just take it the distance. He was a track star. You got him the ball. He was explosive. And he was just gone. He was shot out of a cannon. This weekend, I'm glad I wasn't playing him in fantasy football. But the Sunday window, the Lions weren't playing. I was just watching Red Zone, and they kept showing the Colts game. And Jonathan Taylor, there would be a couple plays where Danny Dimes would just stand there for the Colts. He would get the ball, and it's just a little bit of a delay. And Taylor was there, and he would give it to him. And Taylor would just, and I thought, man, that kind of looks like Haynes to me. So there are my two comparisons about, with backs. One former back, if you're old enough, Tyrone Wheatley, the great Michigan running back. And then currently the former Badger and current Colt, Jonathan Taylor. DeMarco Murray's name is in there as well. So as far as the game, I'm flying around here. What is that? What that is? It's not my hair. It's gone. It's okay. Sorry about that distraction. So those are my thoughts on Wisconsin. Overall, you take that win. I thought there were some people, I was looking at the YouTube comments after the post game I did on Saturday. And one of the comments was that he didn't call it Bush League, but he said that Michigan alums did not like Sharon Moore trying to score at the end when Wisconsin had given up. And that is something that has been debated since I've watched football. How to end a game, taking a knee, showing some sportsmanship. It doesn't always happen that way. We have teams that sometimes are throwing the ball into the end zone. You at times have coaches with some kind of underlying motivation. They don't like the opposing coach. They don't like something that happened last time. They don't like the school. There's all these kind of things. Now, look, Luke Fickell is a Buckeye, or was a Buckeye, and coached at Ohio State, and now he's back in the Big Ten. Could there have been something there? I don't know. Wisconsin overall, you could probably find something with anyone and say, go ahead, stick it to them. But is that what Michigan was doing? I'm just going to spend a second on this because there was some debate about whether it was classless or whatever with what Michigan did at the end. What Michigan looked like they did to me is that they were expecting Wisconsin to still play the football game to the end, but Wisconsin waved the white flag and we're not calling timeouts, which was a huge shock. And if I was a Wisconsin fan, I'd be upset at Fickell. Would I be calling for his head? Probably. But, if you're not going to fight to the end, what are you doing? Whatever. That's Wisconsin's problem. For Michigan, they're running the ball to the end. Did they go a little faster and try to get Jordan Marshall a touchdown at the end? I would say they did. Now, did they call a timeout? And down there at the goal line when they could have probably punched one in, if they would have called a timeout, certainly if they would have thrown the ball, I think that would have been more like that. That seems a little, put it in the classless category. However, 30 or 31-10 looks better, sounds better than 24-10. And there are a lot of people that weren't watching the whole Michigan game. They just look at the score. Heather Dinich, it'd be like, Michigan only won by 14 points. So it's, the computer, will put in there, you get different things. So overall, if you're not worried about ruffling any feathers or anything, the score matters. Bigger score towards a, not as big a score. And the other thing is that Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes heading into the season were looked at as 1 and 1A. Well, Haynes has been spectacular and is one of the best backs in the country and is having a spectacular year. And it's a little bit at the expense of Jordan Marshall. I'll say a little bit because Marshall is still playing. He is still counted on to come in and get some tough yards and all of that. I would say for me, if you're worried about ruffling some feathers or you're worried about getting an extra score or keeping a running back engaged, getting him a little sugar at the end, like a touchdown, those things can mean things. Even if it was their third back, like Jasper Parker that was in there, and you wanted to get him in there. These guys want to play, and guess what? They want stats, and they want touchdowns. That keeps them engaged. It could keep them at Michigan. So I think any criticism that you may get, even if the one guy said he was an alum, that alums don't like this, even at the expense of some, alums not liking it, it's worth it. It's worth scoring. And I do subscribe to the thought that if you want to stop them, if you're Wisconsin, stop them. If you don't want them to score, I should say, stop them. There's still, time on the clock. And like I said, there's situations where you're calling timeouts and all that where it could border on, where you think it could be a little classless, whatever. But it was worth it. I probably spent too much time on that, but I wanted to get that out there because I saw it, and I don't know, maybe some other people were thinking about the same kind of thing. So those are my thoughts on Michigan and Wisconsin. Let's see where the people are at. Oh, it's good to see Ferris in here. I was talking a little trash, trolling him a little bit about coming in late because I thought he was working on a TikTok or something. And then, I knew he was up late last night watching the Tigers. He's out there on the West Coast, but this is Ferris's week. Michigan, USC. I mean, he's a Michigan guy, but a California guy. And, for some people that are living three time zones away. I mean, this is their week. And this Saturday will definitely be their day. Ferris says, will this game be the most important of the season on the road as an underdog? They win this, they may run the table until OSU. They lose, and they will probably not be a playoff team. Well, this was always going to be a gigantic game. Just if you take a step back, and if you're a fan of Michigan history, Michigan football history, Michigan against USC it doesn't actually, get any better than that as a college football fan. I mean, it is to see those two helmets out on the field at night. And okay, if I'm making a list of things that, before they take me away, I'd say, let me watch Michigan play USC at night in the Coliseum. I'll be happy. So just from that standpoint, it's great. And, I don't know if there's a lot of different ways it could go. I mean, I'm sure win or loss, but the same thing with the season. They could lose. If they lose, it then puts the pressure of having to run the table, that includes beating Ohio State, to then likely get in to the college football playoff. It could still be done. I know, Penn State, are they trying to, take that approach this morning? Like, hey, if we win it out. I saw Drew Aller, got asked that question, and he said, what do you think? I didn't hear what the guy said. It was asking a question. If I was asking a question, I'd have been like, I don't think so. You guys, I don't think so. But it's big because if they do win, this was one of the games before the season that I thought they would lose. Being on the road, being the West Coast, everything that goes into that, if you look at, again, Michigan history, whatever that, you say, it doesn't matter. This is a different team. That's true. I mean, it is true. But if you look at the hundreds of teams, like at Penn State, it went out to UCLA. Woo! Oh, man. But you can say, hey, Ohio State took care of business. They went up to Washington. They went to Seattle and took care of business. Yeah, if you're a good team, you can handle this. Michigan will make an adjustment this year. Last year, what did Sharon say? Were they a little sluggish? Said there was no excuse for losing last year. Overall, how they felt. But last year they left on a Friday. This year they're going to leave on a Thursday to get more acclimated. They didn't make an excuse. He talked about attacking it, and yeah, you're playing in modern college football now, going out in the Big Ten. It's going to put air quotes, but it is the Big Ten. You're going to have to go out and play on the West Coast. It's a lot like the NFL. You have to go out, and you want to play in the NFL. You can't talk it. Well, we just don't have the energy. Just 3 time zones away. It's tough to get acclimated. All those things are true. I think of 2 things when it comes to, flying and then playing and 3 time zones away and everything else, besides just looking at teams that have to fly east and or West Coast and what their records are. And then the same thing going back the other way. I remember when the Lions had a head coach named Rod Marinelli, and it was the preseason, and they were playing the Raiders, and Marinelli came out with the flight plan. And his plan is that he wanted to toughen up his team. The Detroit Lions, I mean, this wasn't that long ago. The Detroit Lions flew out to play the Raiders the same day that they, were supposed to play them. And then, I don't know, they flew right back. Terrible idea. Anybody that flies a lot knows, it's not just being dehydrated. I don't know what it actually does, taking your body, putting it up into, a plane, 30,000 feet or whatever you're doing for however long, but it affects you. I also experienced it myself one time when I was with the Michigan women's basketball team. They were playing a game down in Charlotte. And like Rod Marinelli, the head coach for Michigan, had the flight plan of, let's fly down in the morning, let's play them at night, and then let's come back. And, look, I was broadcasting. I thought, because normally you go the night before, and team's in rested. I'm out, painting the town red. And It's rough on me, but not on the team. But this time, the flight plan of going down the same day, they got killed. But I had to even think myself as I was sitting there before the game. I was like, I'm not 100%. I feel a little, sluggish. Now I just drank a double espresso, and next thing you know, I was rolling. Experience, that couldn't shut me up. It's a little different when you're an athlete than a broadcaster. So yeah, a good question. The whole West Coast stuff. There you go. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, big game, no doubt, for all the reasons that you talk about. Toby says if we beat USC, we go 10-1 when we meet Ohio State. Yeah, Toby, I agree. If they win this game, they go undefeated into the Ohio State game. John says Michigan has the best running back in the nation. I'm not going to argue that. From what I've seen from Haynes, he is special. He's got an ability to go from 0 to 100 fast. And it's great on a slight delay. It's great. You give him a crease. You get him into the open, and you just see him. He looks like he's 1.5 times faster than everybody that's trying to get him. He just pulls away from people wherever he's at. He's shot out of a cannon. He's just got great acceleration. He's got good buy speed. I mean, it's all of that. And, I am with you on Haynes. If there's a better back, I'm not sure who it is yet. Andres was talking about me taking over at Penn State. Yeah, it's tough for Penn State. They made the playoffs last year, and then a lot of people picked Penn State to win the championship this year. Why not? They had the quarterback. They had apparently the schedule, excellent defense, 2 running backs that seemed like they've been around for 5-6 years, and Singleton and Allen. Why not? Why not would be because of James Franklin. A lot of people pointed out they didn't want to put their trust in James Franklin. Smart asses like me said, no, I'm picking Clemson and Texas, to be in the championship game. What? So yeah. John says, how about the first down call? They brought the chains out, measured, and then decided, no, it's short. Yeah, the whole process there didn't seem like that was right. And then as close as it was, I thought maybe Michigan, even though, what was it, on their own third, I thought they should have gone for it there. I didn't like that. We got some questions from Smash the Numbers. Does Bryce Underwood have to put more touch on his passes to compensate for Michigan's pedestrian wide receivers? Well, I'm going to say that McCulley is not a pedestrian wide receiver. I think he is above average wide receiver, and I think he can be better than above average wide receiver. I think Donovan McCulley was in Ann Arbor and he spoke today. And, I've been at another news conference that he was at, standing around, firing questions to him and listening to him answer them. He's just, this is the kind of thing that you'd like to, to hear about, your girlfriend's boyfriend. He seems like a sweet guy. Seems like a nice guy. He got a soft-spoken, friendly, very, smiles. It seems like a nice guy. I'd like a little bit more me. I think McCulley needs to be more of a me guy. Give me the ball kind of thing. They talk about dog. And McCulley, actually, when he was asked about Marsh, he said, the dog in him is growing. I like the quote. I was thinking that if I could use McCulley saying the dog is growing in Marsh, I was kind of thinking, I'd like to have that dog in you. And maybe McCulley Guys can flip the switch, they can be, super nice and everything else, but when they get on the field, then the dog. Then you unleash them. And now they're, you feed them gunpowder and they're ready to go. Bite. But let's get back to your question. I thought in game one, watching Underwood throw down the seam, and he had a rocket launcher on his right arm, and I was really impressed. And then I thought, man, other passes are coming in a little bit too hot. He did, even in that game, though, throw two nice touch passes. Both of them, I think, were declined. One on the touchdown, and then one when he was on his own 5 or 6, kind of rolled out and put a nice little touch pass, down the sideline. Quarterbacks get better at being able to put touch on the ball from what we have seen. And I remember John Wangler told me that, former Michigan quarterback, that the hardest pass for a lot of the quarterbacks to throw are short screen passes with touch. It can be difficult. Matt Stafford, when he was with the Lions, I recalled that a lot when what Wangler said, because Stafford, great arm, but, some of the touch passes, he's going to, he'll get better at that. So does he have to put more touch because the pedestrian wide receivers? I'll go back to, the whole thing with the wide receivers. Their job is to catch the ball. I don't know if you've seen, what did I say? I would tell you the social platform, whatever it is, but it's Joe Milton. I think he's at his house, and maybe it's a moving company or something, but there's some dude, just some regular dude. And the dude wants him. He's like, throw me a ball like, I'm a wide receiver. And Milton's, who's standing next to his buddy or something, so he says, should I throw it to him? The guy says, yeah, put it on him. And, Joe Milton, one of the greatest arms I've ever seen, just, fires at him. The guy has his hands out, whoa, it hits, and then it hits the truck behind him. And it was like Joe Milton had brought out a rocket launcher and fired it at this guy. But if you're going to be, and if they're done. If you're a pedestrian wide receiver and you can't catch the ball, they're done. Michigan's done. Throw it to the guys that can handle the heat. Throw it to Marlon Klein, throw it to McCulley, and throw it to Marsh. Don't throw fastballs to Samaj. And it sounds like I'm down on Samaj today, because I am. And Jerome Moore treats, I don't say coddles Samaj Morgan, but his approach to when Samaj, I remember in the Rose Bowl, when he muffed the punt, the next series they came out, they threw him the ball. I remember when JJ threw the pick in it was the first play of the game of the same Rose Bowl against Alabama. It ended up not being a pick, but I was like, let's settle things down, just run the ball. Sharon was throwing it. He likes getting the guy right back on the horse and using him. Samaj had another drop. He had another one where he was bobbling it around. Kept him back there on punt return, and they just kept going to him, pepper him, kept giving it to him. It's like, whatever, this hell or high water, they're just going to keep, giving him the ball because they believe in him. Well, today, I don't have that same belief. I would not be targeting. I would not be giving him the ball. I would be giving it to him way less. And I'd be getting these guys, like Urabi says, the M&M boys, more from them. Hadley, going off script, says, if you get a chance to talk about the Tigers, do you think they win the next 2 in the Motor City and avoid going back to Seattle? Well, what do you think, Hadley? I think that they're in a pretty good spot. You win. The whole goal is, you talk about get one in Seattle. I got the first one, which was great. And then they had Scooble going, which makes you sky high, and you're thinking they should win the series now. And then they had what happened last. Yeah, I think they'll split. I think this is going to go in the distance. But the Tigers have Scooble in Game 5, which I feel good about. I feel like there's a slight advantage here, even though the Tigers can't hit, to the Tigers. That's my feeling on watching these games. I'll tell you, both yesterday and Saturday was. I know how those people that run those super marathons feel now. They go through the 2 days. It's grueling, and they go across the finish line, and they got these tinfoil blankets, and they're drinking these drinks. That's how I felt last night after that Tigers game, because Saturday I'm up at going to the Michigan game at 8:00, coming back at 6, watching football till 8, watching the Tigers until the 1 a.m. I was like, whoa, getting up early on Sunday, then right back at it, watching football at 1, the Lions at 4, the Tigers at 8:00 all the way to midnight again. It was like, whoo, man, I got done. And I said, you got to be tough. But I've got experience. I've been through, of course, a lot of Saturdays and Sundays, but it felt a little bit to me like the NCAA tournament, the first 2 or 3 or 4 days, where it's just nothing but games all day long. And it becomes difficult, to stay engaged and watch them all. Saturday was easier for me because I wasn't just sitting on the couch, traveling to the Michigan game and then back. It's not that big of a travel. It takes 25 minutes, but you're able to watch the game live. It's a little different. I talked about earlier than watching it on TV. Man, Robbie's making a comparison of Marsh and Steve Breston. Very smooth and quicker than you think. I like the comparison. Liked, when he had that end around score. Who was that against CMU? He looked like Anthony Carter to me, but Steve Breston had a little bit of Anthony Carter in him as well. So there it is. It's a comp day. Mr. Martini had some Braylon Edward vibes when McCulley makes a leaping catch. I agree. Braylon used to use his frame. You just go down there, and especially that one down at the 10-yard line where McCulley was down there and he threw it up, and he just boxed out the player and went up and had the 2 hands and made the catch. I wasn't actually thinking Edwards, but now that you say it, I have been transported, excuse me, down to the field. And absolutely, I see it. I see it clearly. Okay, Andres is talking about, in my opinion, if the last play was to get one more rep, then that's what it was. Personally, I think why risk a potential injury? Fickle also that didn't care. The injury angle, it is always there. So I hear you on that. You would have taken a knee. I like feeding the players and getting them stats and getting them in the end zone. And I don't mind the, getting an extra score either. So that's what I'm saying. I'm sticking to it. Urabi enjoyed the implosion of Penn State. He also thinks that they will fire Franklin and give Cignetti an offer he can't refuse. Now, I don't know what's James Franklin's buyout. What is it with Michigan with Connor Stallions? People were, they come out, $20 million. Boo-hoo, Michigan, $20 million. James Franklin, they would have to throw him. He was hired in 22, 23, $2 million. That's for other teams. $12 million. How much money is James Franklin owed at Penn State? That's the question. It's not a buyout. Penn State has a $50 million James Franklin problem. All right. So Penn State has to cut a $50 million check. I don't think they're doing that. Now, look, Texas A&M, was it $72 million? I know that sounds incredible. I think it was that much. 70-some million dollars they gave to Jimbo Fisher to get rid of him. So Penn State, are they ready to write a $50 million check? This just goes back to the Stallions thing, where it was the $20 million. Everybody's like, oh, no, that's a substantial amount. Well, $20 million is $20 million. But compared to the big machinery of, the football, when I see all the buyouts, is it $20 million? I go through that. I don't know. I may get a joke about $20 million. Screw Fickle. Ferris is an alum, so not all alums. Thought it was classless. He wanted a touchdown. It has been a while since Montrell has graced the feedback. And he's here during the live, and we recognize him at this point. What's up, Montrell? I can sit here all day reading the feedback. Corey is liking the team. He thinks they'll get it together. Kenneth would like to see him catch some balls out of the backfield, talking about Justice Haynes. Haynes on the game at Nebraska, we don't talk about it maybe as much. The 16-play drive, Michigan's second possession of the fourth quarter, their first possession, they went 3 and out, but they had a 16-play, 77-yard drive, and they ended up getting a field goal to make it at that point, 30-27, right? No, it made it 30-20. Sorry. Put them up by 10 points because Nebraska came back and they did score late. But Michigan, who wasn't very good on third down against Nebraska, they picked up a 3rd and 9. It was a screen to Justice Haynes, who went 15, 16 yards. When they threw it to him, I was thinking, I don't like that. And then it worked, and I was like, oh, nice. Happens sometimes. Here's John. John loves talking about the coaches and certain players. John's talking about my guy. I don't mind, saying it, Ron Belly is my guy. And Soup did a pretty good job Saturday, and they made a great decision to put Marsh at Z. We might need to try Simpson at the slot a little bit more. Old Simpson, Anthony Simpson, who we haven't seen a whole lot of. I was sitting at the game, just see what number, Simpson number 5. He is. I was like looking down there, I had my binoculars, and I'm like, number 5. I was watching the pregame warm-ups, and I was going to see if any wide receiver dropped the ball in warm-ups, and if they were, I was going to tweet about it. None of them did. They had a clean warm-up. Nobody dropped the ball. But number 5, I was looking at him saying, why not get him out there a little bit more? Well, like I said, John, I don't know if you missed the beginning of the show. I'm for now moving forward. I want the passes only going to 99% of them going into McCulley, Marsh, Klein, or Hansen. The 4 players. I don't really want to see anybody else. I don't know, they want to throw a screen here and there. Mostly that's directed at Samaj. Take a few games off from seeing him with the ball. If they get a big on the SC and they want to put Kendrick Bell in there and, throwing down the seam, or, same thing with Goodwin. I didn't see him out there very much. Do it. Corey doesn't feel bad for James Franklin, especially all that negative recruiting against Michigan. Yeah, I feel bad for James Franklin, negative recruiting, his tunnel shenanigans where, I don't know, what were they? So his team was throwing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and then he, the tunnel's nothing but problems. He made a big, the hell with James Franklin. I think it's, as college football goes, funny that James Franklin has fallen on his face. CT says he thinks Marsh will be a great wide receiver for Michigan. I don't think he is average or pedestrian. That's directed at somebody earlier who was calling the wideouts pedestrian, especially given his age. Freshman. Rico says, I'm trying to flip Olish from Penn State right about now. Well, call his dad. He's the one that made the flip happen, I think. Smash the Number says he has the demeanor of Big Bunny. Who's Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny. I can't say that I know the demeanor of Bad Bunny. I do have one of his songs on. I don't understand what he's saying, but I have one of his songs saved. And I've only seen him, I don't know which, like Kendall Jenner sitting on the sideline a couple of years ago, last year or something. But I did think it was funny when Tony Kornheiser, they had announced, who the halftime guest was, and Tony Kornheiser said, "Oh, Michael, what do you think of Big Bunny?" And Wilbon was like, "What? Bad Bunny." I don't know why that. I thought it was funny that he called Bunny. It was funny that he called Bunny Big Bunny instead of Bad Bunny. Does Bad Bunny do any songs in English? Does he have? Don't you need like at least 4 or 5 good songs to do the Super Bowl halftime? That sounds like a bad guest. Bad Bunny. CT wants to see some more touch on the passes. I think that's something that you can ask for. And I think he might be able to deliver that. No truer words have ever been put together here. Marsh and McCulley are our wide receivers. That's right. That is right. So USC, I watched them play against Illinois. And I know it's different. Illinois went and beat Purdue. But what I saw from what Illinois was able to do against USC is that they were able to out-toughen them. They were able to. They were the tougher team. They were able to run on them. They were able to throw some screens and make some hay in the passing game that way. They were able to bully them. 5 years ago or so, I watched USC play Utah could have been the Pac-12 championship game. And I had never seen a team, even Ohio State, be a softer team. The tackling, they would run up and they were playing 2-hand touch, and the guy would spin around. And I thought, this is the worst exhibition of defense that I've ever seen. This is a total embarrassment. And USC knows that we're going to get tougher. We're going to get better. Lincoln Riley's teams, when he was at Oklahoma, had that same kind of thing. It's like they didn't care. He had a little bit of that Rich Rod, where great offense, give him a quarterback, scheme things up. He's pretty exciting, but they forget about the defense. I think Lincoln Riley's the same way. And I know he brought the guy over from USC, and or UCLA. You know, they're supposed to be tougher now and everything else, but it didn't look that tough against Illinois. That's why I am going against, and I'm going to say it right now, my preseason pick of Michigan losing their first 3 road games. And I'm reversing this one too. I think that Michigan is going to win this game. And right now, I feel like it's going to be 28-27. So it's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be a fourth quarter battle. It's going to come down to, you know, you got to make a big time play. Obviously, it could go either way, but I'm going to pick Michigan to win this game on the road coming up Saturday night in California. Let's just get that out of the way. That's how I feel. That's what's going to happen. JMFD wants to go back to the unnecessary TD if it would have happened at the end of the game on Saturday. Says it would bring about bad football karma for the future, so don't invite any bad karma. And people talking 56 million now. Yeah, bad karma. Nah, I'm, against is going to come back to bite you. Somebody's going to do it against you. I don't care if somebody does it against Michigan. That's the one thing about, scoring at the end. I've never been in a spot where I thought, oh, these mean bastards throwing the ball when Michigan, remember that. No, it's been like Michigan needs to step up. They've got their young players out there. If it's a game that's already over, stop them. Play defense. It's even more like you got a team kneeling on you. You almost feel bad. I think there's been a shift, JMFD and everyone else, that that's not part of the karma conversation or anything anymore. You understand that you're playing for fourth quarters and that guys want to play and they want to score and you only get so many opportunities. So stop them. I don't know, did you feel the same way about Harbaugh? You remember him throwing on Michigan State? No, the hell with Michigan State. I mean, you can say that. Football's not, for the no, it's just, I think it's worth the if you're going to say a possible injury, somebody's pointed out possible karma, as you're pointing out. To me, that is worth it in getting a player, keeping him engaged, getting him a touchdown, getting an extra score, and how it might look to potentially, if you're, fighting for a last spot and Heather Dinich and the computers are, looking over your resume. So that's it. 2-3 years of Big Ten media revenue for Penn State. Hell, 1 year, I think they get more than 50 million. Yeah, hey, it's tough. $50 million. There's somebody saying 58. So you guys are on top of it. We miss MB being here. Let's go. So, yeah. We'd rather see Bugs Bunny than Bad Bunny. Better look into Bad Bunny more before you say that. Oh, Bad Bunny, I guess, is pretty popular. He has a ton of popular songs. Older people don't know. Much like Kendrick Lamar last year. I was on board with Kendrick Lamar. I don't look at halftime guests for the Super Bowl, or people like to discuss that more than the games or anything else that's going on. I don't care. It's entertainment. Guess what? If they bring, Bugs Bunny out there and I'm watching a couple minutes and I'm like, is he speaking Italian? French? I thought he was French, but I think he's Spanish. Like, this song sucks. I don't care what language it's in. You know what I'll do? I'll just walk in the other room. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I've missed more halftime shows than I've ever watched. You know, talking about the television experience, the Super Bowl is a hard game to watch because you're sitting there. I'm training myself. I watch the game. I'm riveted in on what's going to happen, and it goes to the commercial. A lot of times, I'll get up. But the Super Bowl, you're compelled to like sit there and and watch these commercials, and then it seems like the last 10 or 15 years at least, I watch the commercials. Everybody's like, these commercials all suck. I don't sit around waiting for the halftime guest. It's all good though. People like talking about it, so I'm there. And like I said, I got one song from Big Money on my list. Damn if they still football's got a long memory. Comes back to get you. Woo! There you go. More Bad Bunny talk. He is a wrestler. Maybe he works that. Like a real wrestler or the wrestling that everybody likes. Like that's also something. I have to admit, I'm not I realize that people really like it, but I'm not much of a wrestling fan. And I was wondering the other day about it because people reference the Hulk Hogan, I think Andre the Giant fight or match back whenever it was. I think I was in high school. Was it like this WrestleMania 3, maybe something like that? But I saw somebody tweeting about it and said, that was one of the biggest events of my lifetime, and everybody was locked in, and I was thinking I wasn't locked in at all. I don't know, I think I was as big a sports fan as anyone. And I have zero recollection of it. I wasn't sitting around in the newspaper like, oh, the Hulkster or whatever else. So I don't know. And none of my friends were either. So sometimes, things in life just miss you. And, people love it and talk about it. And, it's this transformational event for the area. I was here. I was a big sports fan, and I don't have any recollection of it at all. So I don't know. I was probably, I don't know. I was gonna say something. I don't know what I was doing. I was probably, watching some games or something. I don't know. Out with some girls, playing some poker. More Bad Bunny talk. Let's see. Bad Bunny had a guest appearance and participated in matches, including the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania 37, and even held a belt. Or wait, he even held a WW 24/7 championship for a brief period. Is that a belt? No. That's not making me like Big Bunny anymore. Mr. Martini hasn't watched the halftime show since Janet pulled off her shirt or whatever, had the wardrobe malfunction. I was at a BW3 in Ipsy watching that halftime show, and I was watching it. I was sitting there. I was like, oh, that was it. The funny part about that is more people talked about the wardrobe malfunction than the game. Wasn't that the Panthers and Patriots, the wardrobe malfunction? And that ended up being a great Super Bowl. Tom Brady came back. He made some great plays. Did it go to overtime? I don't remember that. Or, it was a great game. And nobody talked about the game. Everybody just talked about Janet Jackson. That's it. Looking for some more feedback. Mr. Martini had the worst stomach flu, and that didn't make it any better. But the wardrobe malfunction, I mean, it was if they had a wardrobe malfunction now, we wouldn't see it because they, have it on a little bit of a delay. Is that right? I think so. All right. As finishing up, I wanted to just talk about college football in general. We have been talking about it as we've gone on here. That Penn State goes out to UCLA and they're a 24.5-point favorite. I know that because I put $2 on them. I thought, UCLA has nothing. Penn State will cover that in the first half. So Penn State loses that game. Jerome Moore was asked, hey, do you tell your players about, Penn State going out and losing against UCLA? He said, I don't need to. They'll know. They pay enough attention that they'll know that Penn State lost. But I'd never heard anybody say, he said, we're Michigan. We're not Penn State. He's like, we are not Penn State. And, Penn State's motto was, we are Penn State. I was thinking that Jerome Moore, we are not Penn State. But the other part about it is just look at somebody mentioned that Justice Haynes is the best running back in the country. And I was looking at all of who they say the best quarterbacks are right now in the country, because before the season, it was Klubnik from Clemson. It was Aller from Penn State. It was, even though we hadn't seen him, Arch Manning. And all three of those guys have been complete flops. And I feel bad for the, the draft experts that all, were putting their mock drafts together, and they had Arch Manning, going as the first pick, and, Klubnik and Aller going in the top, 10, or if not the top 5. And so now we got, Dante Moore, Fernando Valenzuela Mendoza for Indiana, Mateer. I mean, there's a couple, Carson Beck. I mean, are these guys? I said last week that I wouldn't trade Bryce Underwood for any quarterback in the country. Would I trade Bryce Underwood for Fernando Mendoza? Oh, Ty Simpson is, he's playing well for Alabama right now. I feel like, Ty Simpson, Dante Moore. Do I wish that Dante Moore would have gone to Michigan? Because I did at the time, like everyone else. But if he would have come to Michigan, so he wouldn't have played his first year like he did out in UCLA, but he would have played last year. Remember the whole conversation, if Michigan even had a decent quarterback last year, that they would have, beat Oregon, Illinois, Washington, Indiana, at least 2 of those. That had Dante Moore. But they wouldn't have got Underwood if they had Dante, but then Dante would be in his 3rd year at Michigan. Dante Moore. Dante Moore's looked at as the best, him and Mendoza is the best quarterback in the country right now. I'm not trading Underwood for Moore. Even if I'm asking myself this question, I was going to say, of course I wouldn't, because, Underwood's a freshman and Moore will probably leave after this year and be a top 5 pick, if not the number 1 pick. No, I'd take Underwood for 3 more. But if there was a rule that, Underwood could leave after this year, if I was the Miami Dolphins, I'd be happy. I was watching Tua, throw to Jalen Waddle's wide open around the seam, and he threw it, 5 feet over his head, thinking, Bryce Underwood's better than Tua. And I love Tua. Here's my takeaway on all of this quarterback and everything else. Very difficult position to play. Wow. So tough to be one of the best. And Michigan's got a great one. So there you go. That's what I'm sitting here. I will agree with the Tigers need game 3. I agree. Definitely, I feel like that, although I do feel like they're going to split. We need the good Flaherty. Yeah, you need good Flaherty, and then you just need I wouldn't mind to see 5, 6, some crooked numbers being put up there. Ferris is talking about the Rose Bowl is the greatest venue in college football. However, it is the worst venue in the Big Ten regular season. Interesting. Well, nobody goes, right, to the UCLA games. Sharon today said that the Coliseum will be sold out, and then he said, because of Michigan. So a lot of Michigan fans, what is it? Is it a whole 80,000? That seems incredible. But it's a college. Michigan holds 110. Does it hold 90? What's the capacity of the LA Coliseum? This says 50, but it's the actual Coliseum. What's it called? The LA Coliseum where USC plays. What's the capacity? Here we go. They're talking 77.5. Sometimes I don't like AI, but this is working just fine. 77.5. I was going to say 80. Close enough. 90. 77.5. Going to be a hell of a game for that. And then Michigan will go out Thursday early in practice, and they've got a connection out in LA that is going to allow them to practice at where the LA Chargers practice. It's a nice connection to have. It seems weird that the Rose Bowl would suck so much. But it's been since 2003. So it's been a long time since I've been there. But the surrounding area is so wonderful with the mountains on each side, and you're down in the canyon or whatever it is there, and there's this great tailgating. Of course, the weather is awesome, and the sign outside where it has the Rose Bowl is a great place to take a picture. It's pretty cool. And then inside the stadium, it's cool because you'll look just over where the bowl is and you'll see palm trees. And it's like, that's cool. But that's it. Right. The team sucks, and I don't know about the amenities in there. Back then, the press box, it was nothing where you would be like, whoa, this is great. Nothing like that. JMFD saying that the LA Coliseum had major renovations recently and had the capacity reduced. Oh. Ferris with the nice information that it will be the home to the Olympics. That's right. The Olympics are going to be in LA. JR says 92542 is the capacity. So, there it is. Maybe that is with the renovations, took it down to 77. That might be a fun game to play. Let's play it. What is the capacity of... So you need to have a well-known stadium. The Horseshoe. I would immediately say 90,000. You want to say more or less? Be like the Price is Right. What's the capacity of the Horseshoe in Columbus? 104,000. Let's see who got it right. I don't know how fun this game is. 101. Bimba knew that it was more. JMFD knew more. Ferris knew that it was more. J.R. Morse knew that the toilet bowl holds more than 90,000. What was the capacity of the Silverdome? 80,000. That's what I'm saying. What was the capacity of the Pontiac Silverdome? So this is talking Silverado. I don't care about the capacity of wheel axle. What was the stadium capacity of the Pontiac Silverdome? 82.6. Looks like we got some pretty smart people out here. No, 82.6. What I always say when it came down to the Silverdome, back in the day, there was this blackout rule that if you did not sell your stadium out, that the game would not be seen locally. And even though the Lions had the great Barry Sanders, repeatedly, they would fall short of capacity. Even with the teams giving away 10,000 tickets, they still couldn't get it. And so you had to go out and watch it elsewhere. And there would be bars that would play the game, but they were putting their, I don't know if they were putting their license or just putting themselves in jeopardy of getting a big fine, maybe both. The late Michigan hockey color analyst Jim Hunt owned a bar, and he would play the Lions games when he wasn't supposed to. I watched a few of the games there. George's Inn in Ypsilanti would play the games. And I had heard that George's Inn had done that, and I think it was a Thursday night game against the Buccaneers. And my friend and I walked into George's Inn, and we walked in. It was basically like a big trailer. We walked in, and the place didn't look like any football fans. Guys are just sitting up at the bar, and there's no TVs on, and we're thinking, oh, this is like the last place you want to sit around and watch a football game. They weren't even watching it and have a beer, but then you say, hey, we want to watch. Well, then they ask you, like, are you? I guess they tried to feel you out, see if you were an inspector or something. But then when they knew that you were just watching football, then they turned the TVs back out. Like, oh yeah. And I sat in a little folding chair off in an auxiliary room at George's Inn one time, and then Barry just went off. It was a great experience. Shows you that it doesn't really matter. You get a great game where you're at. Bimbo went to Pistons games at the Silverdome. Yeah, they'd bring that big curtain, and they would curtain half the Silverdome off. This is when you sound old. I guess because you are old. If you're talking about the Pistons playing at the Silverdome. When the Pistons played the Lakers in '88, we decided, let's go to the NBA Finals. And we paid $5 or something. You hear people say ridiculous things when you're older. You're like, my mom always says, I was $1 for gas or whatever. I paid $5 for a finals ticket. And I remember sitting like way up in, one of the last rows at the Silverdome. And you're looking down there in the court, looks like a little matchbox, First play, that's a foul. Come on. You could see from all the way up there that it was a foul. Affair says the Silverdome always had a bunch of fights. It was insane. Yeah, they did. I think, that had to do with the 10,000 tickets. They would just flood the market with it. They would just give away the tickets. And then so people were like, let's go there and get hammered. And they still do that. But yeah, they would fight. My brother for about 10 years had season tickets, upper bowl on the first row at the upper bowl in the corner. But that would be like that would be right where all the fights were, right down below. And yeah, you'd sit around. Definitely. A lot of fights. I snuck in 9 beers one time at the Silverdome. I remember tailgating, and I had this coat that had all these pockets in the back. It was this puffy coat. And we were all tailgating out there. And then you sneak in a drink or two once in a while. But, once I got one, the guys were like, let's see how many, we can load you up with. So I had 9 beers in this big puffy coat. And back then, they weren't even patting you down, I don't think. You just had to go through these revolving doors that if you've had a few, you're like, you hit the revolving door, but then it had like a vacuum type of effect on you, like it was going to suck you in or something. But I made it in. You ever see the video where the guy's patting people down? He just they walk by and he's like, it wasn't even that. Oh, those were the days. I went to a Michigan-Illinois game. I would have to say probably around 2004, maybe. And I was walking in I think probably with the students section or whatever. They snuck in a quarter barrel. I mean, I saw it and I'm thinking, how are they getting that thing in there? But sure enough, I don't know, under a jacket or just had to throw a jacket over it. You're just carrying it with. That was even after 9/11. So maybe it must have been before 9/11. Can't believe you're bringing in a quarter barrel. It all changed, folks. In terms of, sneaking things into stadiums for good reason. There you go. That's it. I'll tell you what, I was the life of the party once I got that jacket with what they were charging for the drinks. It was pretty good. All right, so that's going to do it. Threw it over a fence and then retrieved it, the quarter barrel. I think they walked it right in. I don't know. I do remember that I'm not much of a mixed or hard liquor, but that people were, putting those bottles in their socks. Malibu something. That was the tailgate I was at. I noticed everybody was doing that. I was like, ooh. What other point I got to make about sneaking in the drinks to? Oh, I was going to make the point about walking the steps at Michigan Stadium. I can recall back in the day, you wherever you were sitting in Michigan, and you'd be like, you have to run up to concession stands or whatever, the bathroom, and you go running up those steps. You get about halfway, you're like, woo, let's get up. And then you get up all to the top, and you're like, whoo, man, you almost feel like you got to rest a couple seconds. Well, for these home games, I go up from the field, everybody's gone, and then I walk up those steps, and there's a very good indication of what kind of where your fitness level is at. I'm walking, I'm talking. They do have some rails there, which are nice, but I haven't. I get up to the top and woo. It's tough. It'd be pretty tough, but I've made it each time. But I have to admit that it's been like, woo, man. It's a real gut check. I never did see a Lions game at Tiger Stadium, although I did see a Red Wings game at Olympia. But 6 years old. I don't remember much, just the red jerseys. I went to, I don't know, what was the Silverdome start? 76. First year I went to one of those games, but I don't remember much about it. They were playing Washington. That's it. That's all I remember. It's funny though, because I had one of these. I saw a picture. I don't know where that photo's at, but I'm wearing like the shiny Lions jacket. Never recalled ever seeing that jacket in my life. And then my dad had a perm, which I didn't even never know they had a perm. And I was just looking at that. I'm like, wow, my first Lions game. I got a Lions jacket. Who knew when I was 7 years old? It's totally shocking. And then where's my dad come up with that perm that he's sporting? Okay, so I would like to invite you to join us all on the Maize and Blue Review. That's over on on3.com. You type on3.com up, and then it takes you there where it says subscribe, and then you see the Maize and Blue Review, and that's where you double click. Just jump in there, click, and away you go. And it doesn't take you that many steps. And next thing you know, you're sitting there on the board, on the den with all this Michigan information, all these Michigan fans ready to discuss Michigan and everything else going on with you there. So we'd like to see you over there. On3.com, Last Rivals, recruiting, Michigan football, soon Michigan basketball, Michigan sports, Tigers, Lions. It's all there. I guarantee you'll love it. We'll see you over there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for participating. And we'll talk with you on Wednesday.